You too. You too. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to do this interview with you and share the amazing work that you're doing with our community. So thank you for being available today.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to record this. I see that's turned on, and we'll share that with you as well afterwards. Okay.
Great. Great.
So Keely, I know that when we talked about you with our community, we said that you were an entrepreneur, that you were a disability activist, and that you're the founder and CEO of Talent and Zeta Studios. Zeta?
Zeta, yes.
Zeta. I
My
didn't have it right
grandmother.
either way. Zeta. And but really that's a lot of stuff. There's a lot that I could say about you, and what I really like to do instead is just ask you to describe yourself, rather than titles. Like, tell everybody who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Yes. Gosh, where do I start? It's strange, isn't it? I feel like I'm always changing and developing, and I think especially during this time and during COVID, it's like you're just evolving, I think, as a person. So I describing myself, I think my granddad would say a loving granddaughter, and um,
Aw.
yeah, I it's difficult to describe oneself. I'm very passionate about what I do, and my work really is my life, and I love it, and I think that's super important. Um, and I've definitely had a massive change in my life. When I was 17, I think became a completely different person and a new person. And I learned from those experiences, and I'm sure I'll say that again in a couple of years' time when something else happens to me. But I think those big life events that happen to you really do shape you and shape your life.
And so that first big life event happened to you when you were 17.
Yeah, so
Tell
I
us
was
about it.
sure. So I was training to be a dancer at a prestigious dance college in London, and I just started to become sick. I couldn't eat any food. I was in excruciating pain,
Mm.
and I would try and fit my entire 10-hour dance day as much as possible into the hours of between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. because those were the times of the day that I could be well and kind of stand up and move. Um, and then it was kind of a very disruptive cycle, and I was becoming really unwell. So went to the doctors. They just told me it was all in my head and didn't believe me that I was actually sick.
Uh,
So I was misdiagnosed for 2 years. I wasn't able to really eat anything for 2 years. I was constantly in and out of the ER. And then finally, I got told that I had a very rare intestinal disorder, which meant that I couldn't process any food. So from that, I had an operation, went wrong, and then had 8 more operations, and
oh
then
my.
came out the other end with a lot of trauma, PTSD, autoimmune, and a permanent ileostomy.
So that is a lot to go through as a teenager. I can't even imagine, let alone at any age in your life. And so I read something about where you use that time when you're like in and out of the hospital, lots of time to reflect on your life, to really, I think, maybe discover this passion that you have for what you're doing now. What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're going through something so difficult and you can't really see the other end and you can't see that light at the end of the tunnel that everyone keeps telling you about, it's very difficult to think about a future. It's incredibly difficult to think about what I'm going to do next. And I think being so young and watching all my other friends go to parties, fulfill their dreams in college and careers, and you're kind
Yeah.
of stuck in this place where you have no idea what's going to happen next. So for me, it was at that point, I was very isolated. I didn't want to see anyone when I was ill. I was stuck in hospital on the gastro ward, which is known for just being older people. So there's
Yeah.
no one even your age. So
Right.
I just turned to social media, and I was just desperate for some form of connection. And through that, I learned the power of talking to people, the power of helping other people. And someone told me, what can you give? which is kind of cheesy nowadays, but it really did save my life and gave me
Wow.
a purpose.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can give other people empowerment and help others and tell them about my story. So I basically just started sharing my story. And it was then I realized I'm not going to go back to dance. Even if I could, I don't want to. Um, I want to start working with artists from a different angle. So I started my company during that time in hospital and started working with artists just via the computer and seeing if I could get them work and kind of live my dream through them.
And how old were you when you started working with actors?
I was around probably 17, 18, kind of when all of this kind of happened.
That's amazing. And so why that? Like there's so many things that you could have turned to, right? Even just telling your own story, but to make the decision to start to help find other people find work in the industry, like how did you come to that?
It was definitely wanting to live my dream through someone else at first, and
Yeah.
kind of in a selfish way. And I was brought up, I grew up on a farm, rode horses, and then when I hated school, I barely went to school. And that's kind of what led to dance and what led to musical theatre, because my mom was like, she's got to go somewhere. If she's not
Yeah.
going to school, she's got to go somewhere. So threw me into lessons and I just started acting, and I actually worked from a young age, and I booked a couple of Disney shows and commercials and loved it. So I kind of knew the industry from like the age of 8 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just something I knew.
And then why, so I'm following your journey, right? And I can understand why you decided that you could like do something to help other people um, move their careers forward in acting. Why people with disability?
So that came later. When I was ill, I had no idea that I was going to be disabled at the end of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize when I became disabled, no one really told me, they're like, you are now disabled. No one kind of gives you that. Like, it's weird, it's strange. So I wanted to get back into acting myself, which I don't do anymore, but I wanted to get back into that. And I went for an audition, and at that audition I booked it, and they sent me for a fitting. And then at that fitting, the next day I got an email because they made me wear a bikini in the fitting. And they said that because of my ileostomy and my scars, that I was too unsightly for the screen, and it was
Unsightly, is
gonna,
that the word they used?
they did
Unsightly?
unsightly, and it was going to be too off-putting to the audience.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I think I have to start helping people like me who's
Yeah.
losing jobs because of something that saved their life.
Do you remember the very first client? Is that what that you took on?
Yeah, I don't, in the UK, I took on quite a few at once, but my first disabled client in the US his name is Paul Ford. He's still with us. He's doing amazing work. And he's booked a ton of stuff, and he's so funny, comedian. Definitely go and Google him. He's great. He's been with us. In the US, he's been with us for 2 years now.
And how many actors do you represent now?
So we've got about 47 clients, and
Wow.
yeah, and we've started taking on Paralympians and behind the camera talent as well, like producers, writers, gaffers, cameramen.
Oh, nice. So anyone in the industry, not just the actors.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's super important that the representation changes both in front and behind the camera. It's just equally as important.
So so is that tell me about being a disability activist and how that kind of phrase about you came to you. Like, is that what you consider yourself to be through this work? And what does that mean to the people that you represent today?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Firstly, I never even knew the phrase entrepreneur, never knew what an activist was. I just
Yeah.
started doing the work because I was incredibly passionate about it. And then someone all of a sudden labels you and you're like, what does that even mean? And
Yeah.
you kind of look it up and you're like, oh, okay, so I guess I can call myself that. And then it just starts getting used and you do kind of get given these labels. To me, it means that you fight for um, the people that you work with, and you fight on a bigger scale as well. You fight to change a global problem or a national problem, something that is bigger than you. And I feel like that's what I'm aiming to do, and especially with these laws, I think as well that are um, very damaging to the disabled community, like the law that I recently found out about called the 14C, which allows people with disabilities to be employed for sub minimum wage, and we're the only minority that's legal for. So those type of things started unraveling themselves when I kind of even realized what those terms meant.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges then that you face in this work as an activist and a representative for people of all abilities. Um, there must be some common themes that you've learned how to tackle over time and how to approach, and also some unusual things that have come up.
Yeah, yeah. The common themes are definitely just a lack of knowledge and a lack of access and a lack of representation. And
Mm,
the main theme is knowledge. And I think when people are educated about something, they start to care about it because they do see that there is a massive issue. And I think a lot of the time it's just because there's no access, there's no knowledge. If there was access and there was access to work and people with disabilities were even given that access to apply for a job or get the interview or go just even into the door, then it's not on us, it's not our job to educate people, but it kind of has to be until it's out there. um, so I would say then when it comes to the knowledge and they start to learn about it, and when I'm talking about they, I mean kind of the heads of departments and the bigger CEOs of larger companies, I think they try, and even with best intentions, projects are made and they try and include people, storylines about people with disabilities, or they'll try and, but it's never done authentically, and they miss the mark because they don't hire people with disabilities.
mm.
So we've really been working to educate on how they can start, and then how their good intentions can actually be good for society as well.
Yeah, I think you've had a busy fall with Disability Employment Month and disability awareness. And what does that work look like on a day-to-day basis for you with some of the studios that you work with in Los Angeles and other parts of the world, I think, as well?
So yeah, always different, always a different day, but relatively the same themes. So I work a lot, obviously, on the UK in the UK. So I get up around 5 a.m. in the morning and start my work. Um, on the UK side of things, so I usually do UK work up until around 9 a.m. LA time. Then I'll usually start New York work if I have anything on the East Coast, and then I usually start my LA day around 10 or 11. And then it's a lot of bookings. Before COVID, it would be more bookings and more requests for talent and less kind of going out. And there's a database called Breakdowns for the artists, where you can see work that's coming in the industry. So we've got some employees who work on that and just help them with that. And we've had a couple of clients book some really nice larger projects. And only recently, those employers have actually called us to ask us how they can make the set more accommodating for the talent, which has been a really nice change. So a lot of the time
Instead of you being in front of them calling you, that's great. That's a turning point.
it really is. It's
Yeah.
such a nice difference. And it's really working. Like, we recently had a client, or just as of yesterday, book a really big project for Hulu, and he happens to be deaf. So we were working with production on telling them why he needs a DASL interpreter as well as an ASL interpreter, and where they can find them and how they should pay for them, and the tax incentives, because they don't have to actually. It's a lot of learning, a lot of educating. Yeah, it's a
Yeah. Gosh, COVID is just in our heads all the time, and what strikes me today is how many lives have been impacted, and careers. Like, you don't always think about all the different things that have been, careers that have been impacted. How is kind of Hollywood and the industry dealing with COVID?
It's so incredibly difficult. I think there are so many negatives and so many terrible things that have happened to many people, and many
Yeah,
people with disabilities have been left without jobs and unemployment, and then the issues with benefits, and because of COVID not getting what they should. But I tend to be an optimist. I tend to try not to look at all of that, and I do think some of the positives that have come out of this has been, just allowing people to work from home where there are still those jobs. And
yeah,
for me especially, that's one of the accommodations that I do like with autoimmune, is being able to have that option of working
yeah,
from home if I'm working on a consulting project or I'm producing, and I don't necessarily have to be on set or have to be at the studio. Then I
yeah.
can, now I think it's more socially acceptable to be in that location.
It's kind of changed the way we work for everyone, I think,
Yeah.
in some good ways too. Um, so when I was looking at some of the clients, actors and people that you represent, I wondered if there was a specialty that you had. I know you work with some people who are deaf. Is there a specialty in that area of people you represent? Is it all so diverse, all kinds of disabilities?
I'm really keen to represent as many different disabilities as possible.
Yeah,
And for me as well, it's so important that we also educate people on, just because I've got a disability doesn't mean that I can speak on behalf of everyone who's got a disability, and doesn't
yeah,
mean that I know everyone's accommodations and I know everyone's access ideals. So I think for me as well, it's been an amazing learning curve working with so many different people with different disabilities.
yeah.
And
Are you known for anything in particular in that area? Like, oh, you should check out, Keely if it's got a certain adversity in your life.
I would just say, if you're talented and you really want to work either behind the camera or in front of the camera, and I do think there's a lot of companies, not a lot, there's two companies that I know of that represent artists with visible disabilities, and
Oh, okay.
there's not anyone that I know of actively seeking artists with invisible disabilities. And that
Yeah,
often gets left behind. And as someone with invisible disabilities, I think it's as equally as important that those people get represented by someone that understands, and someone
yeah.
who can work with them on their accommodations and understand the roles that they actually want to go for and why they keep getting stereotyped. So yeah, definitely people with invisible disabilities as well.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder what advice you have for anybody listening who thinks, "Gosh, I loved acting in school. I always thought that that would be something that I want to do, but I didn't think, that anybody would want me, or I didn't know how to go about that."
I would say find the community. Like, there's an incredible performers with disabilities community in Hollywood and in the UK, and it's amazing to see in such a competitive industry where it's so cutthroat and people stereotypically are mean and difficult, that there are these people that want to see you succeed, and when one person with a disability gets a lead series regular role, it's a win for all of us. And I think it's very empowering to see that and to be around those people. And that's kind of the first step, I would think, gaining that confidence, because you don't want to really go into a room or have an audition when you're not at kind of peak confidence. So I'd say surround yourself with those people first.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you accept a client? Do people come to you and say, hey, I'd like you to represent me? What's your process around that?
Yeah, we used to kind of put out open calls when we would want to take on more talent, but recently it's been much more like word of mouth, which has been nice. We love referrals. We love working with people who know other people and who have
Yeah.
mentioned good things about us, because we see it as more of, it's not what can we do for you, it's not what you do for us, it's what can we do together. And I think the people who really get that are the people who come to us through personal means. And yeah, so I always just love having conversations with people. And if you're not ready now, then, how can we help you get to the point of you are ready for representation? So yeah, just
Yeah.
those conversations really.
I'm sitting here thinking that other than your lovely accent, it might be interesting to learn more about like the work that you do on both, here and over the pond, so to speak. And so, how do you really like plant your feet in both places, and what does that work look like for you?
I definitely got lucky, like growing up in England and being in the industry as a kid, even though it was very different to what I'm doing now. It's nice to be familiar with how the industry works. And I sit on the board of a couple of like industry, like on the British Film Institute's Disability Advisory Council, and
Oh,
the
nice.
yeah, and that definitely keeps me in the loop of UK stuff. And it's really interesting to see how different the UK and the US are in terms of accessibility and inclusion. Um, so what we're doing in the UK is we're building a film and TV studio, which is going to be the world's first studio that's fully accessible for people with disabilities. And it's for everyone, aimed at everyone. We want the biggest companies to be there, but the idea behind it is that it will not give it, production can't make any excuses as to why they're not hiring people with disabilities, because every accommodation that anyone could possibly wish for has already been made, and they don't have to pay for anything, because that's usually the
Wow.
excuse that we find. And we've done that in the UK mainly because the studio space is very needed, and the US production companies fly over to the UK to film there because of the tax incentives and the credits that they can get.
Oh, so it's not just for the UK to use locally. People from all over the world will go. That just sounds to me like an enormous project that someone, would take on. Like, you don't seem like the likely big, big buck guy, right, who can build a studio, or that I would think it takes a lot of people to do that. So I'm impressed by I don't know if you know this phrase, because you're from the UK, but big, hairy, audacious goal. Have you heard of BHAGs
No.
before? So BHAGs, it's a thing here, right? And with their big, hairy, audacious goals. And they're the things that people take on that are scary and that you might never, fully achieve, but you have to go for it. Um, and and I wonder about your mindset taking on these big, hairy, audacious goals. And like, how did you get to have that? Is it confidence? Is it your support system? Is it just a dream and you're a fighter? Like, what is it about you that takes on a project like this?
I think it's so many different things. the thing that really spurred it was just, I was so sick and tired of the excuses of why talent and why people are not being hired, and like, how can I make that change? And I'm impatient. I'm I'm just incredibly impatient, and I don't want to do it one by one. I just had this idea. I was like, what if I can do it all in one go? And it was
Yeah.
a massive idea. And I thought, maybe in 10 years time, maybe when I've become a name and I'm established, and like, because who am I to do something like this? Who is she?
Yeah.
I have no
Yeah.
idea. But I guess I got lucky. I just put out the idea I created, put it on paper, really showed it to a friend who introduced me to someone else who loved the idea, who said, let's do it. And another friend introduced me to someone else, and we just partnered with a landowner in the UK in April, and we put in planning permission, and it was honestly incredibly lucky. And we find out on the 19th of November if that goes through, and if it doesn't, then it's still the project that I'm going to be working on, no matter where it's going to be in the UK, no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes. And people do say, why do you talk about this in the idea stage when you haven't put shovel to dirt yet? Like, because if someone says that is a brilliant idea, I want to build a studio that's fully accessible for people with disabilities, and I'm like, please go ahead.
Yeah.
It would be great. So yeah.
What are some of the things that you have to know or learn about when you say we're going to build a fully accessible studio, the first in the world? What are some of those things you have to know and consider?
I knew nothing about building a studio.
I love
Absolutely nothing. And as I say, I never went to school. I never did business studies. I never trained in anything. I was in hospital for half my life. But I just Google, like, my brother is actually in the construction business. He builds houses, and he also never went to school. And I'm like, how do you do what you do? And he's like, I literally just YouTube it. He YouTubed how to uppin a house. And he's now got like this large construction company in the UK, and everything he learned was off YouTube. So, but I wouldn't say that's not my top advice. I think working with people who do know what they're doing and
Yeah.
who also care, and you'll just find a way to get it done. And I always say, do what others don't. And by that I mean,
Wow.
just think outside the box and
I
think
like
about,
that phrase.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's really important. And I think when you've kind of had your life on the line, nothing else really matters, because you're like, I've probably been through the hardest time in my entire life. I'm going to do whatever it takes to do this awesome thing that I think can change the world, I guess. And you just kind of make it work. But I do think once you've got something exciting, the right people gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
And I think you just have to be a bit ballsy and message people out of the blue, and just like, yeah, randomly contact people, even if you think they'll never get back to you. Like, I think I've sent probably about 100 emails to the top CEOs of public companies, and maybe I've had 2 replies, but those 2 replies have been so valuable that it's worth it.
Yeah. I'm admittedly blown away by you and all that how big you dream. And I'm wondering if, like, what does it feel like to you to dream big? Do you have a process that you go through? Does it keep you awake at night were you always this way that you're just so determined?
Yeah, I definitely have not been this way. I wanted to be a dancer. And I never even wanted to be a lead dancer. I just wanted to be in the ensemble in the West End, and I would be very content with that. But I think I just think when you go through something so life changing, it does change your perspective, and it's hard. It's really hard. You know, you've got these big dreams and these big things happening, but like, where's the income? Well, how am I going to make rent? You know, and those
Yeah.
things, and you figure it out, because the dream is bigger than the problem, and the goal is bigger than the problem, and it's the thing that you're fixing or the thing that you're working towards, and the people that you're doing this for and with are more important than those little things that might get in the way now and then.
You have such you have such great phrases that you live by that you're sharing. I love them. I want to put some of them up on my wall to think about that way. I wonder what you're most proud of.
I think I think I'm most proud of coming to LA, because I when I when I made that decision, I had recently got my ileostomy, and I just had my last operation, and I think I was a month post operation, and I was still pretty sick. I was still recovering. But I was like, if I stay in the UK, I know that I'm going to be stuck, and I'm going to be surrounded by the things that remind me of this terrible time in my life. And if I
Uh-huh.
really want to move on, then I've got to take a risk and do something that I'm scared of. And I was petrified about getting on an aeroplane, because I've always been scared
Yeah.
since I got sick of making plans, of being somewhere that doesn't have a medical facility, of being stuck somewhere where I can't get medical equipment. So just getting on that airplane was a huge thing for me. And
Yeah.
that's all it really took to be like, I can do things that I didn't think I could before.
Did you have friends and family in LA? Did you like know where you were going when you got there?
No, I was, so I had a thought that I wanted to do some form of course. So it kind of gave me a week's worth of something to do and people to meet. And so I signed up for this course. My entire family back home in England told me that it was a scam and that I shouldn't do it, and they just want my money, and that it's just a terrible idea. But I was like, well, either way, I will have learnt a lesson. I will have either learnt to look into things more, or it will have been an amazing week. So I did this course. It was not a scam. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
It was
And it was incredible. It was basically just artists coming together, and I struggled with it a lot. I could only really do half days. I couldn't do the entire course, and I didn't tell anyone why, which I think I should have done looking back. But then I did end up staying 3 weeks longer than expected, because I loved LA. I had my mum send out extra medical equipment for me because I didn't have any bags. And then I just booked a room in a Airbnb and stayed here for a while longer, and just loved it and really felt free for the first time in a very long time.
wow. How long have you been there now?
I will have been here 3 years in March.
I'm really, really so impressed with your courage and your determination. How do you define yourself today, other than your titles? Like, I'm a CEO and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an activist. Like, describe your attributes and what's different than maybe how you would have described yourself before.
So hard, isn't it? It's so hard. I would definitely say confident. I'm still pretty shy, and I come across as an extrovert, but I'm very introverted in so many ways.
Really? I
Yeah.
hear that a lot about people who like to act, is they're very shy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. And I've definitely always been that way. But I think when you're working with people, like, I spend a lot of my days working with people who are twice my age. They look very different to me. They haven't had the same experience as me. You kind of have to have that, even if it's fake confidence,
Yeah.
just to get through it, and for them to even half believe in you. Because it's so easy for those people to just look at you and be like, nah, she's not doing that. Like, how can she do that? So I definitely say confident now, even if it's a fake kind of confidence. Um, and I think that means many different things as well. Like I'm even more confident to make plans, which took me so long. And even in terms of eating, because I had about 2 or 3 years of not being able to eat any food, it's only recently I've had the confidence to try different foods. And that small thing, it's like relearning a basic human need. And that small thing changes the way you do many different things.
Wow.
It's weird when you're kind of doing kind of big things, and then you think about eating as a big thing as well, and you compare those two, and you kind of just rethink your whole life, and it's like, what, this is so strange. um
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. So the studio, you're going to know soon, a couple weeks, about permits or next steps with that?
Yeah, so we put in a planning permission document, which will basically to the council, and they will let us know if they're happy with us to start building in that location. So we'll know that on the 19th. So fingers crossed. But if it's a no, it's fine. We will just move on, and we've got a couple of other places that we've been in conversations with councils about. So it's not the end of the world, but it would be great because I'm
It'd be
impatient,
great.
as I said.
And then what's your timeline for that?
So we're hoping after this, after we've got this permission, we then have to go into the back and forth of conceptual design permissions. So this will be really the initial permission to be like, we can build on this location. And then they have to agree to the height that we want the buildings, the type of materials we want to build the buildings with, the all of the water and the sewage and where all that's going to come from. So it becomes a long back and forth, which will probably last about another 6 months. And then we hope to be able to start building in around 12 months. That's the ideal goal.
I hope you come back and share the progress that you're making with this. It's an extraordinary thing to think about, like the world's first anything, right? But this would be the world's first fully accessible studio. It just sounds remarkable.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
yeah,
I was really thinking, like, what does that mean? What does fully accessible mean? And throughout this journey, we've been interviewing and speaking with people who have an array of different disabilities. And how would this be accommodating to them? How would they be able to do their best work? And I think that's what it is. And it's something that is universally designed, and that people have really taken the time and the care to speak to the people who have not had anything designed with them in mind before. So that's
yeah.
what that really means to us.
As we're working with people of all abilities here at No Barriers or in our lives at home, wherever people work who are listening and part of our community, what what have you learned that you'd pass on to us about the best way um, to I don't know, to work with people of all abilities? Like, what lessons have you learned?
I've definitely learned that everyone is different. Like, it seems so simple and so obvious, but you can't guess. And it's people, I think, from what I've found, like having those accommodations and like being asked, how can I make this better for you? How can
Mm-hmm.
I enable you to for you to do the best work possible? And then literally just taking it off their shoulders and being like, we're going to do it. There's no ifs, there's no buts. You don't have to change the way that you do anything, because we're going to change it. And I think those conversations are super important.
Yeah, yeah. I like to do a little lightning round of questions and learn a little bit more about you personally. Before I start, what is your diet like today, Keely? Do you eat anything you want?
Kinda. I have a few restrictions because of the ileostomy, but If you spoke to my boyfriend, he would say that my diet is chocolate. I pretty much live on chocolate. It's my favorite thing in the whole entire world. And I actually started a chocolate company recently.
Oh, that's right. Tell us about that.
So I started a chocolate company called Revolt Chocolate Company. And the idea behind it was I I think that chocolate and things that people associate with smiles and energy and love really does connect people and bring people together. And so we started this company called Revolt Chocolate Company, and the idea as well is that everyone's always fighting for something and everyone's always wants something different, and if we can all talk about what that is together over something as simple as chocolate, then maybe we can all change the world together. uh,
And so where would people buy it?
So we are still in the process. We're gonna have a Shopify page on e-commerce type things, and then we're hoping as well that it will be in Target stores in the next couple of years,
Wow.
and Walmarts and wholesalers as well.
What is your specialty? Is it dark chocolate? Is it milk chocolate? Is it, I don't know, spicy chocolate? Like, what's your specialty?
So we're starting off with dark chocolate flow packs, so chocolate bars. And we're also thinking about the idea, this, I've never told anyone this before, so you guys are the first people. So we have been in conversation to create these dark chocolate truffles, which will have some spice on the top. And it's like, it lights a fire in your belly is like the metaphor for the
Yeah,
chocolate company.
that's a great metaphor and a great chocolate. So I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of people out there who would share your passion for chocolate. I'm so glad we got to that because I forgot when you and I talked about it before, you told me that. And so we'll be anxious to try your chocolates once you're to that stage.
Yes, I'm excited.
Okay, and so almost anything that you want to eat, but especially chocolate. So let's start with foods. Are you a like a dessert person or a entree person? Like, do you have a favorite, dinner or a favorite dessert more?
Definitely a dessert person. In the
Yeah.
UK, we call it pudding. We call everything pudding. And I was so confused when I came to the US and people were like, "You like pudding?" And I'm like, pudding is like everything, like cakes, chocolate, biscuits, everything sweet. And so I always make that mistake. But yeah, definitely I've got a sweet tooth.
You have a
Um,
sweet tooth.
yeah.
Are you a night owl or a morning person? I know you have to start work early because of the hours in the UK, but if you had your way, would you be a morning person or a night person?
I'm a morning person. I can do anything in the mornings, but I want to be in bed by 9:30.
Yeah. Okay. And are you a sports person or like uh, a book reader? Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, I love sports and I grew up playing a lot of sports. Although I'm not very good at sports, I would choose sports because I'm terrible at reading. I'm severely dyslexic, so sports all the way.
What sport did you play growing up?
So I grew up, my parents trained racehorses and I grew up on a racehorse yard. So I would ride out the thoroughbreds and the horses, and I wanted to actually be a jockey for a short time until
I have
until
a
my mom
granddaughter
told
who
me.
would love to meet you.
Uh,
She's a horse fanatic for sure.
I would love.
If it's a beautiful day outside, would you rather hike or would you rather swim?
Oh, I think hike. Then I can take my dog.
What kind of dog do you have, Keely?
I have a Chihuahua. I don't know where he is. A little Chihuahua. He's great.
How often do you fly back and forth? Are your parents in the UK still?
Yeah, my family's in the UK. Before COVID, I would fly back quite frequently, probably every 4 months or so.
Hmm.
Um, Usually mainly for work, but I would always see them as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I haven't been back since March, which is no, probably before that. I haven't been back since January, and then
yeah,
COVID hit, so it's been a while.
yeah. That's the timeline all of us are dealing with, right? Just everything changed in February or March for most
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Well, I have loved getting to know you, and I'm so impressed, Keely, by your energy, your your dreams and your perseverance to make them come true. That just takes an awful lot of courage and strength. You're a strong young woman. It gives me hope for, you know, the future of our country, as many of us are aging, to have people like you know, growing up and being bold. So thank you for what you do for so many people. It seems like such a niche, right? Like it's Hollywood, but it's so much more than that. And
Yeah.
it's about empowering people and giving people access. I'm really impressed with it.
Thank
And
you.
we hope here at No Barriers that we continue to connect with you and get to know you and you know, learn from you as you are reaching for your dreams.
Oh, thank you so much. I love what you guys do so much, and you paved the way, and I truly appreciate your support, and thank you for having me. It's amazing. I love it. Thank you.
Well, keep us posted and send us some chocolate when you have something for us
Yes,
to
I
sample.
definitely will. I definitely will.
Stay safe, Keely. Thank you so much for being part of our story today.
Oh, you too. Thank you
All
so, so
right.
much.
Yeah, you bet. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.